Welcome everybody, I'm Dave D, Chief Marketing Officer of GKIC, and in this video you're going to discover innovative, powerful, and almost secret ways to generate leads and drive traffic to your website from my all-star panel of experts headed by none other than the millionaire maker himself, Dan Kennedy. Dan Kennedy is the world's #1 marketing expert and has written numerous books and has helped tens of thousands of business owners from every corner of the world make dramatically more money and transform their businesses and their lives. Joining Dan here in the studio are two of his all-star students, Brittany Lynch. Brittany is a former Google insider and is known as the #1 traffic and conversion expert. And Don Crowther. Don is an internet marketing and social media expert who teaches business owners how to leverage social media to increase their reach, results, and ROI. And joining me by Skype are two other Dan Kennedy Star students, Rich Sheffrin.
Hi Dave, hi Brittany, hi Don, hi Dan, hi everyone.
And Jeff Walker. Rich is the CEO of Strategic Profits, a company dedicated to helping entrepreneurs make more profits, get more time off, and grow a business they can walk away from without affecting profits. Jeff Walker is the creator of the famous product launch formula and teaches business owners not only how to launch products, but build real businesses and live large. Welcome everyone. Dan, let's start with you. The first question I have is a lot of businesses, whether they're online or offline, brick and mortar, they have a philosophy of build it and they will come. What is wrong with that thinking? Build the product, build the business, and people will flock to it.
What if they don't come? I mean, that's
Right.
what's wrong with it, is
Right.
what if they don't come, right? So it's, it sort of dates to a time. I mean, the philosophy, the idea that that's what you can do comes from the era of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, build a better mousetrap and they will beat a path to your door. However, there weren't a lot of mousetraps, there weren't a lot of doors. Right? Whereas today, there's 6 bazillion options. And pretty much you don't have to, you got to give somebody a pretty good reason to leave their house, because in reality, they can access almost all the options without even leaving their house. So, you know, you look at, so I just saw recently in our community where you're taping, 6 or 7 people they just started to do a once a week farmer's market. You know, so they got themselves a parking lot, and they each got a pickup truck or a booth or, you know, whatever, and one of them's a baker and one of them's got, so they're there, and they got a big sign, and they're waiting for people to show up. And they're probably going to be there for about 3 weeks, and then we're never going to see them again. Because, again, that dates to a time. I mean, so what they should have done, of course, is created all kind of lead flow and lead capture before they ever got there. If they pooled their money, there's inexpensive offline things they could do in that environment, every door, direct mail, Valpak, et cetera. They could have built social media. They could have driven everybody to free organic cooking classes online, built themselves a database, and then been able to drive people to where it is that they were. So the idea that you enunciated is then made worse by the person who thinks they have a really, 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 really awesome thing that they have built, which, you know, will be magnetic because of its awesomeness. And again, it's very antiquated and it's very dangerous. The thing itself rarely has enough magnetic power. You need to be able to move people to it.
Don and Brittany, do you find the same thing with people who are online and have websites? They spend all their time building beautiful websites, and talk a little bit about that and the problems with that.
Well, the worst is when they go out and they spend tens of thousands of dollars getting somebody to do this professional website for them, and nothing happens at all. So the key is, as Dan brought up, you've got to have that lead flow, and you've got to have some automated systems that bring people in. You've got to do well with the SEO, you've got to do well with the social media, all the different areas that drive people there, and build your expertise so that then they're coming. And then you've got to give them great stuff once they come, so they keep coming, right, so that you can build a long-term customer here.
See, the other thing about that, if I may, is that the build it and they'll come approach is also flawed because it comes to random chance. So the analogy in personal life would be, let's assume Brittany decides she wants to go find a rich husband. Okay? You don't have one yet, do you?
No.
Okay, good luck in that.
So
Gentlemen?
let's assume, call the toll-free number at the bottom of your
We
screen.
will be putting the toll-free number at the end of this, so make sure you stay tuned for the
we have
entire
just
thing.
added another bonus.
So what is she going to do for lead capture?
Well, so the old approach, right, is Brittany gets herself all prettied up, and she goes to the best cocktail lounge in town, and she hangs out, and she's billed it, and they will come, and she hopes they come, but she's subject to random chance of who is there that night at that moment, not with someone else, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas now, if you look, so people use Match.com, they use dating websites, they use social media. Before that, smart people did print. Our friend Gary Halbert, did print. And so now you're exercising some control. If she wants a really rich husband, she would advertise in Investors Business Daily. She would,
You are doing that, right?
She would hang out in the private jet terminals. I mean, she would go to classic car shows. She wouldn't go to the neighborhood bar.
Right.
So there are lead generation principles that have really changed the way all smart people do almost everything. And the dumb ones are still in their business life getting themselves all prettied up, parking themselves on a stool, and taking random chance.
Got it. So Brittany, when you first got started with your business, what was obviously you had a website, but you didn't have any traffic. What is the first thing that you did that someone could do to start generating some leads? Because that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, the first thing that I did was I had my website put up, but I didn't really spend that much time on it. To your point earlier, a lot of people spend so much time building their website, and then they think that because it's up that they're automatically going to get traffic. And even worse, they have sometimes not the best ideas. I had one customer come up to me who had spent like hours and hours and hours creating this info product on how to find free parking in this town of like 1,000 people, and which is just
That's good.
Yeah, it was
That's good.
one of the better ones. Anyways.
Better be selling that baby for about $1 million.
Exactly. That's what I said. So, and he didn't have any traffic plan, right? So, on top of the terrible niche idea, he had spent all this time building a website and had no plan on how to get that book out to the market. So for me, I always focus on using traffic. Where can I get the traffic for the best possible cost and get the fastest form of traffic to my site in order to start testing it? So I usually use AdWords. Obviously, I used to work there, so I have had some experience working on it and getting some really good results. But AdWords is a really great way to start testing first and then going to the other traffic forms like direct mail and social media and that bit
And
too.
just in case anyone doesn't know, what is AdWords?
If you go to Google and you type in, hotels in Florida, the AdWords is actually the ads on the right-hand side or on the top section that come up and call to your attention that you can book a hotel there. So you pay per click.
So they're basically mini classified ads. Really, is what they are.
Yeah.
And then when someone clicks on the ad, it goes to your site, and you only pay though when they
That's
click on the ad.
absolutely
Is
right.
that correct?
So in theory, you're getting a really qualified person to your site because they're engaged in that search.
So Don, same question to you. What is, like, when you first got started, because there's a lot of people watching us who are just getting started, what would you do? Or what would you recommend that somebody do? Maybe that's even a better question.
Well, the first thing is that you need to figure out who your target audience is that you're trying to reach and what their needs are. Then once you've got that identified, then you start producing information about the area of your expertise that they want to know. You start putting that up on a blog or a website. You can use direct mail. You can use lots of different techniques here. And then you start promoting that through social media, through online advertising, through direct mail, through all these different kinds of areas so that you're driving people to the information. I actually don't recommend that someone come up with a site that starts selling something first. Spend a while generating a huge body of traffic, a huge group of people who are on your list, because as you do them, one of the key things that has to be on your website is you have to have what we call an opt-in form, a place where people can put in their name and their email address to get more information from you. Then you are sending out regular information to that, and every one of those people is now worth money to you in the future.
Got it. Got it. So Dan, the online guys only really are talking about driving traffic online using online methods. But the truth is, you consult with almost all of the famous big gurus. They come and they pay 18 grand, 18.5 for it to spend.
18.8.
18.8 now?
Let's not be discounting.
Okay, we want 18.8 to come for a day of consulting with you. Why do you tell them why this is like just using online is almost a recipe for a disaster? And what is like some secrets that you tell them about integrating online and offline?
To be fair, just using offline is a recipe for disaster too. The worst number in business is 1. The next worst number is 2. But the more you are dependent on one means or only a few means of attraction, the more vulnerable you are to disruption. And so, like right now, everybody who's dependent on radio and television in at least 9 to 11 states is going to be fundamentally out of business for September, October, and November, because we have a presidential election in play in which billions of dollars are going to be spent buying radio and TV time at prices no sane marketer will ever pay. If you are an online-only marketer, one of the ways you're subject to disruption is a major news event that draws everybody to go watch CNN. I mean, so you're in trouble there. So, and then mechanically, all these things can have their ups and downs. Google, where she came from, you know, they stay up all night figuring out how to change the rules tomorrow morning.
Yeah, in the green room, she was just saying that.
Well, it is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is that. So, and by the way, see, he's actually an old direct mail guy. Okay, so we had to show her a stamp, but you know, he had to.
And the key word would
He's
be
old direct mail guy.
How are you calling me old?
So here's the thing. Eric Schmidt of Google described it as a giant cesspool. Right? And so one of the things that I work with online-oriented marketers about is how to get their lead, their prospect, and their customer or client, even if they got them that way, out of there to make certain sales to them in more of a one-on-one vacuum rather than a competitive bazaar. You know, so the minute when you are doing your selling in the online environment, you are really selling at a swap meet with a lot of distractions all around you. When you are selling one-on-one through direct mail, it's more akin to sending a salesman to the door who sits down at the kitchen table with them. Now, that doesn't mean you can't integrate in the opposite direction, because you can. I have clients who use a lot of direct mail to drive online, and actually their sales event, be it video or webinar or whatever, happens online. And then the question is, do you take them back offline? So integration is all things in different order for different purposes.
What about somebody like Brittany who doesn't even know what a stamp is, or an envelope?
Well, we had to drive her over to the post office.
That's right. We drive her over to the
Yeah.
post office. But here's what I hear from a lot of people, Dan, and I'd like you guys to comment as well. God, that's expensive. It's, you know, it's scary. I don't know. It's so much more work to send a letter off. So somebody comes online, I got to send them something offline. It really freaks people out a little bit. Address that.
Sloth is sloth, you know. I mean, that's both those things are true. So in raw expense numbers, obviously, email, social media cheap, especially if you don't value time, right? If you don't actually assign dollars to the time being consumed. Direct mail gets to one of the most expensive things you can do. But really all that's irrelevant. It's return on investment that is relevant. We pay our bills, we send our kids to college, and we retire on what our return on investment was, not on what our expense was. So it's really a fallacious number. There's also, to be sophisticated for a second, there's the issue of dollar cost averaging when you're acquiring leads and customers. Because again, the more doors you have open, the better off you are. If you only open the cheap doors, you are severely handicapped in speed, size, growth, stability, security. The more doors you open, the more stable you are. As far as the work, like all marketing, once you are past the figuring it out stage, which they both described a part of a figuring out process, anything can be delegated, outsourced, automated,
automated,
including direct mail.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I have a client, we have built for them a 16-step follow-up system to when they get a lead. There are 4 online steps, there are 12 offline steps. It's all entirely automated. The lead is dropped into a bucket, if you will, and it goes to whoever's going to generate the offline stuff. It goes to whoever's going to generate the online stuff. 90% of it's completely automated. The business owner never touches it, never sees it, doesn't have to do anything with it once it's working.
Got it. Let's go to Rich Sheffron, who's joining us via Skype. Rich, you've had many, many successful businesses, and maybe a lot of people don't know, you actually had offline business. You had a clothing store, very successful, a chain of hypnosis centers, all 7-figure businesses, and you integrated both, back then I don't even think you were doing online, but what are some of the best strategies, or give us one strategy that you use to drive traffic online? What's one lead generation method that you use?
Well, Dave, I'd have to say that one of the most powerful and effective lead generation methods that I've used and continue to use to this day are free reports. Over the years, I've written about 7 different ones. But the very first one that I wrote back in 2006, the Internet Business Manifesto, generated over 1 million leads in the first 4 years that it was released. So obviously, I was sold on free reports ever since. Now, the type of report that I have found that works best is a report that ultimately redefines the prospect's problem and offers a counterintuitive solution to solve it. And the reason why is pretty simple. Prospects get an epiphany, an aha. They get excited when they get a new perspective about a problem that they've not been able to solve. And then when you provide a counterintuitive solution, it also provides an aha because it's something that they haven't heard before. So when you take those 2 things combined, you get the benefit of not only getting the lead, but having that lead share that information with others, which causes it to go viral, which causes it to get spread around, which is one of the reasons why the Internet Business Manifesto was downloaded so many times and has created so many sales for us at Strategic Profits.
So Jeff, let's go to you. You are known as a product launch specialist. You've created multi-million-dollar launches, which obviously need a lot of traffic. So you're driving massive amounts of traffic. What are some of the techniques that you teach, or a technique that you teach your clients for driving tons of traffic to their website during a launch?
Well, you know, it's really amazing. We do drive a crazy, crazy amount of traffic in these launches. You know, sometimes I look back and I see these tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of visitors and video views, and it's pretty amazing. But those aren't really the numbers I'm watching, because at the end of the day, I consider these product launches and product launch formula to be a real conversion machine. The number I really like to watch is the dollars per lead, which is basically for, you know, how much money am I making for everyone who comes and opts in on my site. And if I'm not, in my personal launches, if I'm not getting $70, $75 per lead, then I'm starting to get pretty bummed out. And, you know, they go up to, a lot of my launches, $75, $85, $90 per lead. I've had launches that were in the $125, $135 range. No matter what you measure it against, how you stack it up, those are really strong numbers. Now, this really comes into play when we're talking about joint venture launches. So there's 2 main types of launches. There's internal launches, and that's where you're doing a launch to your list, to your house list. And internal launches they're fun, they're amazing, they're easy, they're elegant, and I love them. And they're great. They're absolutely great. But and you should always be building your list of prospects and leads and customers so that you can do these internal launches. And it's like if you've got a list of clients or prospects, an internal launch is absolutely just money in the bank waiting for you to take it. But where things get really crazy is with JV launches. And this is where you get other people with lists that match up to your offer, with responsive lists, to mail into your launch. So you typically would create a squeeze page. And the squeeze page if someone comes to your page, you offer them some type of content if they give you their email address. So now you have these JV partners, your joint venture partners, who have lists, and they're mailing their lists about your launch. They're mailing to your squeeze page. People come to your squeeze page, they opt in, and now you're building your list and you're building your launch. So think about if you had 5, 10, 20, 100 partners mailing into your launch, that's where you get the mass traffic. Now here's a key piece, because if someone has a really responsive list, they have more people coming to them to promote their stuff than they could ever promote. You know, the demand on them is crazy. So they're picking and choosing what they're going to promote. And a big part of when they're picking and choosing is how much money they're going to make if they mail an offer. So if you have a well-executed launch and you have that conversion machine, then they're going to end up making more money from your launch. And that's how you attract JV partners. This is a really key piece. It's a critical math piece. It's not really complicated math, but it's important math. Like I talked about $75 per lead is, sort of my bare minimum, what I'm aiming at. But let's say you put, just to keep the math easy, let's say you did a launch that was generated $50 per lead. Now, and you're paying a 50% commission. So in effect, if a 50% commission on a $50 per lead, that means for every lead, you're going to pay $25 per lead to your joint venture partner, your affiliate partner. And that's a really nice number. I mean, if someone can get $25 for sending you a lead, it's generally going to be pretty easy for you to get people to mail. And that's where that conversion machine is so important. And that's how you get traffic. You get traffic because you have that great math, that great conversion machine, and then you can go attract partners. That's how you drive massive traffic in a product launch.
So Dan, most people think of you as primarily an offline marketer, but as I mentioned, literally almost all of the internet gurus consult with you, study you and do all of that. So one of the things that you teach, which I find very, very fascinating, and you mentioned it, is not just doing either or. So you teach both. You teach, and you also teach how to integrate them. So can you give us an example of maybe a client that you've worked with who you've integrated both online and offline and the results that it got for people?
Well, so I have one client currently who is online only, one client currently who is offline only. Everybody else I work with has both online and offline media, and mostly multiple media in each of those categories integrated in some way, shape, or form. So you will see an information marketer, client of mine in the financial services industry, dealing with financial advisors, insurance agents, and so forth. Matt Zagula, very successful campaign last year, which was drive to a website, predominantly by offline media, print advertising, direct mail, in order to claim a free book. The website then did certain things to them while they were claiming the free book, also sent them the free book, and so they went on and they came off. Maybe more interesting to people because they would prefer to have the sales event be online. I have a client who mails about 1 million postcards a year. They are all driving prospects for an investment course online. The first sale is taking place then and there online. So it literally is one step. It's postcard, drives to site, video assisted sales letter, not even anything sophisticated, has webinars, no questions of on-demand time.
Just a sales letter.
Video assisted sales letter.
Wow.
Makes a sale, makes a one-click upsell, and then those buyers come back offline for sale of more expensive and more complex things by direct mail and by inbound, drive to inbound reps. And that's a model, that we use a lot. If you look at big direct marketing companies, you will often see, even with product delivery, you will see drive online, back to the online catalog, back to the online demonstration video of a related product, et cetera. So in both directions, off to on to off, and one may be in front, the other in back, or vice versa. And you may be running parallel tracks at the same time too. Now, if all that sounds horribly complicated, making a lot of money usually is.
And making it consistently too.
Yes.
So it's not just a
not just one-time
right,
events,
right.
but that's exactly right. And I always tell people they should welcome the complexity.
Now, why is that? Why would
Well,
someone-
because it's a great barrier to knockoff. And so the more visible you are, so one of the richest info marketers of his time used to say, I prefer to make my money in the dark, right? Well, it's harder and harder to do that. And if you are going to incorporate online media, pretty much you can't. You make more and more of your secrets visible, the more of that you do. However, if you have a pretty complicated online to offline to online and vice versa system, they never really see all the moving parts, and even if they see them, they have the throw up their hands reaction, this is more than I want to do. And so the best barrier to knockoff is complexity and sophistication.
And the beauty of the postcard strategy that you just laid out is that your competitors aren't even going to see what you're doing to generate those leads.
No.
To generate those
No.
leads. Let me go to Brittany. Brittany, if you could ask Dan a
Oh,
question.
Brittany, a postcard, it's a little,
I know what a
it's,
postcard
oh,
is.
okay, okay.
Actually, in the museum, where the
you
stamps
know
were.
Andrea.
There is a museum.
Actually.
So, Brittany, I want to ask you a very specific question. What objection do you have, if you have one, and it's fine, I want you to ask Dan a question, or Don, because Don's an old, very old, direct mail guy, about using like postcards or direct mail or something, a question that you would have.
Yeah.
Ask
Actually,
that.
that's a really good opportunity for me because I'm actually running an event in September 8th, 9th, and 10th. And I was initially really hesitant about running a direct mail campaign because of the perception of doing more work. And I thought, everyone's on the internet. What's the point? I can access them all here. And so we've mailed our list. We got the first, boatload of people into the event through that. And now we're actually rolling out a direct mail campaign to our leads already to access them offline because my view is as long as I'm going to make a profit from it, I don't care how much money there is or how much work there is involved. So with that said, I'm going to be direct mailing out all of my customers in the Chicago kind of area. The sales letter, we've got a sales letter online and a video sales letter. Any sort of, overview tips for, filling that room, getting the best results from the direct mail campaign above and beyond just, printing out the sales letter and popping it in there.
Well, so I'll go first. I mean, every media has its virtues and its vices, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's good and bad about everything. So if you think about online, for example, some of the best things are there's unlimited real estate without a cost attached to it. So we can do 16 pages, we can do 160 pages. If we can get them to pay attention, it doesn't make any difference, right? In direct mail, obviously it does. We can have actual things happening. Mm-hmm. Video, we can have interaction. We can't do that with direct mail. So you want to leverage the best things about every media when you use it. So the best thing about direct mail, particularly for a complex or relatively high-priced sale, mm-hmm. which in your case you're describing trying to get somebody to
An event.
Pack bags, leave spouse, kids, and dog at home, get on an airplane, come to a hotel, pay money, et cetera. So it's a relatively complex choice for most people to make. And all marketers take for granted often how complicated and arduous what they are asking mm-hmm. people to do is for the people they are asking them to do it. So in those environments, the best thing that direct mail allows us to do is have a much longer conversation than people will tolerate in other media. And so very often, and I'm not in favor of short anywhere, by the way, but very often we can get people engaged with a direct mail package for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 75 minutes, 90 minutes on their way to a decision, and it's very hard to do that in online media. So our biggest opportunity is that kind of engagement. Mm-hmm. Then you have to think about how you make that happen. So is it one long sales letter? Is it 5 pieces? Is it a CD with it? Is there an object with it? I mean, I would lean, and when I do event marketing in direct mail, I lean to fairly elaborate packages, toys, objects, gizmos in the package that both obligates readership and causes people to be engaged and interested. I want that package to be a fun experience.
Right.
That they want to sit down, spread out on the table, sit down with it in their lap on the couch, and that's the best thing direct mail gives us.
Because to your point earlier, there's not as much competition offline, and that's probably a very exciting experience for them, receiving a direct mail campaign from someone they see as traditionally internet marketing or online only.
Yeah, and by the way, you should not worry about incongruity in it.
Yeah.
Because
No, tell the story about you were at Yannick's seminar. That's a classic story.
Well, so incongruity rarely gets in our way, you know. And so it's not just there. I've done it at several internet marketing conferences, none of which I am ever invited back to a second time.
Maybe there's a reason for that.
There is. There is.
And here it is right here.
There is. I point out to everybody in the audience, and in all of these cases, I'm usually like the keynote guy, I'm going first, right? And I point out to them that, you know, they have all gotten on airplanes and they have traveled and they are about to spend 3 days in a room with world-class experts, all talking about how to make all the money you would ever want in life online. So you need a computer and you need a printer for the money to come out of, and that's really all you need, right?
Yeah, you can print money off your computer.
Oh yeah, you didn't know that?
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
However, what everybody should notice is that all the world-class experts who are selling them that packed their bags just like they did, got on an airplane, came here for 3 days, and are standing up in front of them doing manual labor. So if the story was actually true in the narrowest way that it is told, there would be attendees, but there would be no speakers. And so I never get invited back. And I don't really mean it to be horribly disrespectful of them. It really gets to the integrated media story, is if you look at almost everybody who is selling in one way, shape, or form internet marketing, if you look at their own businesses, they are actually using multimedia, not just online media. And in many cases, they're doing manual labor. They're using human media. And so you want to like do as they do, not necessarily do as they say.
teach, or as they teach. So, okay, we've talked a lot about now driving traffic, getting leads and things like that, but the second part of the equation here is conversion. So Don, let's go to you. You're a social media expert. Talk a little bit about, do you use social media for conversion?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, talk a little bit how you would do that. Give us an example.
So the first thing I want to just mention here for a moment is this concept of the integration of everything applies across everything. It applies not only direct mail to online, but you also need to be integrating within online too, because there's a lot of people who think all I need is a website, all I need is a Google advertising campaign, all I need is social media, all I need is an autoresponder. You need all of those things. You need to be doing well with everything. You need to have video. One of the things that Dan brought up is every medium has its strength. And one of the keys is take the best strengths of each one and use it appropriately to get the overall sales increase. My mom used to always teach me, those who succeed are the people who are willing to do what those who don't succeed aren't willing to do, which goes back to Dan's point of complexity and build it out. And so I actually, if I may, I'd like to actually turn a question to Dan at this point.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Go right ahead, please do.
So a lot of the people who are watching this are people who are just getting started. They may have $5,000. That's their budget that they can do. How do they put it together? Because it's going to cost money to do all this and to test it. How do you put it together on a limited budget so that you can actually make this thing work and build out the huge empire that we all want to have?
Before I answer the question, I would correct the assumption. There's probably a lot of people watching who already have established brick and mortar businesses, local service businesses, or established info marketing businesses. But for the person who is watching, who is resources limited, so the first answer I have is one nobody's going to like. So if we are editing this afterwards, you may want to just make this go away.
But you know what? But this is the point of these videos, this series of videos, is that somebody is finally telling the truth. We're finally telling the truth about what it really takes.
So if every penny matters, then I'm going to go test as many of my premises as possible, spending no money. So like we just recently in GKIC Diamond members call, I interviewed Rick Cesari. And Rick built, most people would know the George Foreman grill business, but before that he built the Juice Man business with Jay Kordich. And they spent 2 years putting Jay in rooms with radio publicity initially, thereby spending no money to put him in a room to do the juice man pitch until they got it just nailed, so that an overwhelming majority of the people in the room ran to the back of the room to buy a juicer. And they did that before they ever went and spent money on TV or now building a website or any of those things. So, like, I'm a big believer, if you think you got an awesome product, head out to the swap meet, hang a mic around your neck and sell it. And learn something. Sell it one-on-one. Sell it, however, without spending any money. Then you pick out of all the things you can do to drive leads and create traffic, you pick the least expensive, the narrowest path, which is the exact opposite of what you just described and what I've been talking about. You pick the narrowest path, which may very well be a print ad drives leads to a website, and there's a webinar every night, and you're actually doing it and closing sales. And you don't want to stay that narrow any longer than you absolutely have to, because you want multimedia, integration, offline, online, and as you said, within online and within offline. But there's no doubt that you can begin making a sale. So I have a client, just talked to him, hadn't talked to him in many years. We had we still owe the Guinness Book of World Records, not that they issue one, but in the infomercial industry for having the longest running pure lead generation infomercial, 8.5 years. The longest running, there's longer running shows, but there's not longer running lead generation shows. Now, when he and I first started to work together, he had basically one thing working: print ads, response, send package, make sale. Okay? Then we started to build it out because there is money coming in. There are a bunch of knowns. We know if we put that package in front of certain people, so then we went to broadcast, and then we went to direct mail. Today, we would definitely have gone probably to internet simultaneously, if not in advance of broadcast. And so you start to build out your channels, right? And so when you say integrate within online, so you have multiple channels, right? You have YouTube, you have LinkedIn, you have Facebook, you have all these channels. So if you can't afford to do them all, do one really well, and then bootstrap the money. But prove the premise before you really start spending any money on it if money's tight.
It's like the Wright brothers. Who was the other guy at the same time? Someone else was also trying to build an airplane.
That was Charlie Wrong.
Is that who it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Wright brothers spent all the time focusing on the glider, building a glider for like 4 years. And
Should I apologize?
Are you making fun of me? I can't tell.
Charlie Wrong?
Right, wrong. Yeah,
All right.
Okay.
Look, I wasn't alive then.
There we go.
Anyways, the Wright brothers, they spent 4 years focusing on building out the glider for the airplane, and this other guy, Charlie Wrong, he spent
People are busily Googling. Charlie Wrong. Let me see the picture of his plane.
He spent 4 years trying to build an engine. He spent all this money building the engine, and the Wright brothers focused on getting the glider right. And then they got their airplane off first because they were focused on testing the hypothesis slowly. And I think that's the same thing with marketing. You got to figure out the right message, and that's where online integration comes on really handy. Is social media. I find a really great way to go and test those hypotheses and test, what is the problem that the person is really looking to solve, and then roll it into more expensive or other types of media like direct mail and that sort of thing.
I think the other thing is, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Like when I work with a client, I want to prove things as they need to be. So the first thing I want to know is, can we generate leads? For this premise, can we get, which goes back to your thing about building a list before you try and sell anything. I mean, can we get people to raise their hand and express interest? And what does it cost us to get that far? And does that number work, right? Then can we convert them? And if we can't convert them to A, can we convert them to B? If we can't convert them to B, can we convert them to C? Until we find something that gives us a conversion level that we can live with. Then can we monetize them on the back end? How much can we create an added value beyond the initial transaction? And then you get to start coming back and improving this piece and improving this piece and improving this piece. And I'm sorry, I stomped on his line, so you got to let him go.
So the one point I wanted to make is I think there's many different roads to get to Rome here. So you can start by going to the swap meet and putting a microphone on and selling it. You can start by doing some YouTube video. There's many different places you can come from. I think the core of what you said is start with the no-cost ways. Prove it out.
If you need to.
Start generating a lead stream, and then start turning that into conversions. And so the thing I would recommend to everybody is just keep your options open, think through them all, and be willing to test.
And get started.
Absolutely.
Don't just think. I mean, a lot of people think, never act, because they don't know what to do. They don't have the systems or some of the systems that they've learned from people, quite frankly, aren't the real system, what the person is really doing. So you got to have the right system, then you got to take action. Let's go to Rich Schefren. Rich, I know that you're a huge proponent of automated webinars. The question I have for you, though, is do you just play the webinar and you make the sales, or is there some other procedure that you use after the webinar or before the webinar to help with conversions?
Wow, Dave, there are actually a lot of processes that all come together in our overall webinar process. You see, once the prospect gets to the webinar registration page, if they register, they'll get a series of videos before the webinar that sort of warms them up to the offer. But if they decide that they don't want to register, then they're offered the Internet Business Manifesto instead. And that includes a link where they can register after they've read the manifesto back for the webinar. And each and every week we make several sales from people who did just that. They downloaded the manifesto, read the manifesto, and then decided they wanted to go see the webinar. Now, either way, after they either register for the webinar or read the manifesto and then register for the webinar, they will either show up or not show for the webinar itself. And we have separate sequences for the no-shows that will try to get them to the replay 3 times. Now, we found that after 3 times, we're fighting a losing battle. So instead of trying to get them to watch the replay, what we do is we send them to a different presentation. It's me on stage. It's no longer a webinar, but it's really the same information, just a different presentation. And we'll do that successively with different hooks, all in the attempt to get the prospect to show up for one of these different types of events. Now, once they show up either for the webinar or something else, but if they don't stay and they leave early, we'll invite them to a replay where they can pick up where they left off. Now, if they show and they stay and they don't buy, we have another sequence that has different sales messages in it. Now, after we've exhausted that, we'll make other offers, all part of this ongoing process to basically maximize the lead value for Strategic Profits. So it's a really hairy diagram of all the different things that happen. But the main goal is to give every prospect that goes through that process an offer that resonates with them in a format that resonates with them so that ultimately they buy from us and become a client of Strategic Profits.
Okay, so Dan, Rich just talked about using webinars and follow-up systems and things like that, but I think you kind of invented it, a really, really powerful way to dramatically increase your conversions using webinars. Talk about that.
Well, if I invented it, I invented it before there were webinars, because the principle or the strategy is that most people don't do enough follow-up on people who say no. So what we could now call unconverted leads. And so at every level of business, there's almost the idea of, I just gave them my best, right? I just gave them my best presentation. I just had them in the showroom. I had them in the office. I had them in the store. I was in front of them on stage. Now I gave him my best webinar. If he's not going to buy from that, and he's not going to buy now, why invest a whole bunch of time, energy, and money chasing him? All of the empirical data is in opposition to that. So in the automobile business, for example, every car salesman on the planet pretty much has a religious belief that if you don't close them now, you're never going to see them again, okay? Their language is, there ain't no be-backs, okay? The empirical data is that the average person shops for a car over a 4 to 6 week period. They buy the car from one of 4 dealerships that they go back to 2 or more times. Therefore, if you don't give up on them and you did follow up, you would greatly enhance Okay, and there's proof of this. In a healthcare business, and in financial services, but the first time I did it was in healthcare, we have what we call appointment, no sale. So you come in for whatever your diagnostics were, you get the exam, whatever kind of doctor it is sits down and presents a treatment program to you, whether you need this, or you need your back, or you need your ears, whatever it is. And the best of them, more walk out the door without accepting the treatment plan than accept the treatment plan. What do most of them do? Nothing. Okay? Or they dump them back in their general database and they get a newsletter once a month, but there's very little pursuit. If anything, they have a staff person who's really not a telemarketer call up and bumble around and probably make the situation worse rather than better. So the webinar thing actually comes from professional speaking first. So hardly any speaker does it who sells from the stage. I've almost always done it. You go speak, you sell, you do your best song and dance act. Almost no matter who you are, with very rare exceptions, more people are walking out the door without buying than are walking out the door having bought. There's a lot of reasons why they don't buy. They already bought 3 things that day. They promised their spouse they weren't going to buy anything. The spouse actually took their credit cards away from them and locked them up before they let them go. All these reasons, right? So we've always been very effective at essentially taking the entire platform presentation, turning it into a sales letter, in some cases an audio CD or DVD with it. And this goes back far enough that was audio cassettes and VHS tapes, okay? Not 8-tracks, but short of that.
She doesn't know anything you're talking about.
I know. It's all right.
She doesn't even, I don't even know if she knows what a CD is.
It's not
quite
even
frankly.
material.
I mean, so.
Well, yeah, now you'd send a thumb to it. But, and so we will almost always make that pay, and if there's customer value behind it. So the way I approach teleseminars and now webinars is assuming the transaction size and or the customer value supports it. And you bring 1,000 people to a webinar, and if you're really good, like what would you expect your sales to be? You got 1,000 people to a webinar.
For what price point?
$1,000.
10, 12%?
10 to 12%, okay?
You can hit 20, 25
Okay.
with the right pitch.
All right, so let's call it 20. Okay? So that means we sold the 200, and most people, by the way, get very excited because they did $200,000 worth of it. Okay? But we didn't sell to 800, right? And there's a lot to be had with the 800 if we do things to get it. So the first thing that I do now is take the webinar and either on DVD or at least on audio CD, at bare minimum converted to long-form sales letter, often all 3, and deliver it to everybody who didn't buy, often by FedEx. I mean, you start to make dollar and cents decisions. So obviously you could use FedEx, you can use FedEx 2-day, you can use FedEx 3-day, you can use priority mail, which is now a step down, but it's an impressive box. You can deliver that to those 800 with now a series of follow-up steps, both email and offline, until no follow-up step hits a number that you were satisfied with. And I can show you cases with clients where we do more than the 20% with that follow-up process than we did with the original webinar. I have one client, it's 3 to 1. Okay? So we have 3 times as much activity in the 6 weeks following with 12 steps than we had with the initial event in the first place.
I mean, it's a home run strategy. I mean,
Well, and one of the things it allows you to do to close a loop is it allows you to spend more money and use more methods to drive people to your webinar in the first place, because you have a means of monetizing more of them after the fact.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here, Dan, right now, is because I saw Dan speak at one of the Success events, and he was selling magnetic marketing. I think it was $279.
287.
287, and I could at that time. This was 1990.
I take it back. 278.
278. Okay. So anyway, it was I don't know, 13, 14, 15 years ago, and I could not afford it, or I didn't think I could afford it. And so I knew that this is the course that I needed that was going to change my life. I went home and I was talking to my wife, and I was like, oh, I should have got this thing. Well, lo and behold, about a week later, I get a sales letter, which was basically your presentation on paper.
The
Yeah, pretty
transcribed
much.
speech with a little bit of graphics,
Right.
not much.
Right, and so I ended up buying Magnetic Marketing, and from my standpoint, that absolutely changed my life. I mean, dramatically changed my life. From his standpoint, I'm now in your six-figure club, meaning I have spent at least six figures with him. So was it worth it for him to follow up offline with a sales letter? The answer is obviously yes. Let's go to Jeff Walker. Jeff, thanks for hanging out with us. Now you drive, like as we talked about, you're the product launch specialist, and you use a series of videos for conversion, and you call them sideways sales letters. So talk a little bit what a sideways sales letter is and how it works in converting prospects into actual buyers.
Well, earlier I talked about product launches being such a great conversion machine. And really, the sideways sales letter is at the heart and soul of it. So if you think about a sales letter, if anyone watching this thinks about a sales letter, especially let's talk about an online sales letter. Typically, we end up there. We don't know how we ended up. We clicked a link, and we ended up on that sales letter, and the page loads, and it loads, and it loads, and it might be 10 or 20 or 30 pages long, and that thing just keeps on going. And you know what? Typically, what people do is they scroll down to the bottom, they look at the price, and then they decide if they want to buy or not. And so basically, with sideways, we take that, let's just call it a 10-page sales letter. It's a 10 vertical 10 pages, and we turn it on its side, and we go from 10 pages to 10 days. And then we take those 10 days to deliver pre-launch content. It could be typically 3 pieces of pre-launch content. It could be video. These days it's generally video, but it could be PDFs or blog posts or webinars or teleseminars or any number of things. But typically these days it's video. And now you deliver 3 pieces of pre-launch content. And those, they do much of what that sales letter does. When you think about a sales letter, starts off with that headline, and then there's usually a hook and a story, and there's bullets, and there's an offer, and there's a presentation of price, and there's a guarantee, risk reversal. We do something similar with that sideways sales letter. The first video we might, typically it's an opportunity video. If you're selling anything, but especially if you're selling information, you're selling some type of transformation for people. Whether it's, they're learning how to swing the golf club better, or play a song on the guitar, or meet the love of their lives, or make more money, or feel better, physically stronger, his six-pack abs, whatever, you're selling some type of transformation. So typically, you'll start off to pre-launch your first piece of pre-launch content with that transformation, with the message of transformation, with the opportunity to transform, and then you move forward from there. So as you move through that sequence, you build up authority, you demonstrate your authority, you create social proof, you create reciprocity by giving away great content. And as you move through this process, you really capture people's attention, and you cut through what I call the BS detector. If you think about it, that BS detector is ever more refined in all of us, because we're all seeing so many marketing messages these days. And that BS detector is basically, it's like the feeling you get when you walk on a car lot and you see that salesperson coming towards you. You don't tend to, the defenses go up. You don't want to believe them, right? Same thing when someone lands on a long-form sales letter, especially online. And so you take that long-form sales letter, you deliver basically a similar message, but through a different experience over time. When you're just delivering a content video, that BS detector naturally drops. Then you deliver another great video, the detector drops off a little more. Eventually, they'll drop onto your sales letter after you take them through that sequence. Now that BS detector, it's sure, but whenever you ask for money, it's going to spike up some, but you've built up this trust and this rapport, and that's why the sideways sales letter, that's why these launches are so effective, because you're not dropping someone onto a sales message cold. You're building up a rapport, you're building up trust with them, and then you ask for the sale. So that's the sideways sales letter, and that's how you turn prospects into buyers. And that's why it's such an amazing conversion machine.
Okay, so we're coming up on the clock here. So I've got a final question, the same question for all 3 of you. I want you to just talk about a little bit your thoughts about the importance of lead generation. Brittany, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, first off, you definitely have to have a plan, because as soon as you have a plan, the ball's now in your court. You need to be able to know how you're going to get your traffic in order to scale up. And as soon as you establish that plan, really the sky's the limit. You can start to scale up your business into the 7-figure, into 8-figure and beyond. And to Dan's point earlier and Don's point, you also have to have lots of traffic sources. You can't just focus on one. I don't even focus on just AdWords. You got to focus on the social media, the direct mail, all these different traffic sources. So all your eggs are in one basket. So make sure you have that plan and then go out and start doing it, because you have to take some action in the first place.
Got it. Don?
I think the key to successful lead generation is to understand that there are multiple sources, which is exactly the kind of thing that you need training like Dan provides on how to do that. And the second key is to recognize that you've got to get the conversion process after that. So if you're converting at $1, you're only able to do X. If you're converting at $3, you're able to do 3X in terms of paying for it, as well as everything you do after that particular point in time. And the biggest problem that I see people consistently do is they don't have that conversion system built once they get the lead. And so consequently, they can't afford to get the leads that they really need. So go build that system all the way from the beginning all the way to the end, and you've got yourself basically a money-making machine that you just put in $1,000, get 30,000 back, put in $1 million, get 30 million back. And now the question is, how fast can I get $1 million?
Fantastic. Dan?
I think we should squeeze time for a quick direct response lesson.
Great, let's do it.
I think you should tell the end of the Depend story.
Okay.
Which you told me off camera.
Okay.
You don't have to tell the whole agony with the agency.
Okay.
But kind
The agony in the agency. Okay.
of get to the last part of the story.
Okay, so in my early days of marketing, I was a brand manager on the Depend brand. And
Depend is an adult diaper
adult
for people
diaper.
who have incontinence.
yes, and basically, long story short, we did direct marketing. We did a free online offer for them to get a free sample. We did a number of other things where we got names and addresses of people through couponing techniques, et cetera.
Which the agency wanted nothing to do with. They fought you tooth and nail.
They absolutely did, because they said, well, you'll sell a lot more. Well, actually, that's not true. So in the end, what we ended up doing is we ended up getting the names and addresses of every single severely incontinent person in the United States. With that, we were then able to send out direct mail coupons, magazines, offers, rebates, and our business just went through the roof. And the key thing is, we drove our biggest competitor, who was Procter & Gamble, out of the retail market.
That's a great story.
Simply by gathering those names and addresses.
Wow.
So when it came right down to it, the core was get the lead and then convert it.
Wow.
Yeah, see, that's
a great story.
The powers in the list.
Right.
Right? And if you look at most brand advertising, they have no earthly idea, about this. And so the ability to spend more than anybody else in your category in order to acquire leads, it has to do with how good your machine is with what you do with them when you get them. And the better that is, as Don said, the more you can come over here and you can outspend everybody and you can dominate a category. You could pretty much do anything that you want. The last point I would make, though, is we somewhat sloppily use interchangeable language, and I don't want anybody to be treating traffic and leads as a synonymous thing.
Right.
Traffic is what you want in order to
Get a lead.
get leads.
Right.
And the real value starts to be in the leads. So anybody who's just bragging to you about traffic numbers, that's like sitting out in a lawn chair next to the 405 in LA and bragging about how many cars drove past you at 85 miles an hour. It's an interesting stat, but it's not particularly meaningful. What's meaningful is how many of those you actually converted to leads that you were then able to monetize. And that's why I use lead generation language rather than traffic generation language, although you need one to get to the other.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's been a pleasure to be in a room with two smart people.
Pleasure to be here with you,
Dan, thank you very much. Don, Brittany, thank you. Rich, Jeff, thank you guys so much for joining us here.
And it would have been a pleasure to be in a room with you guys if you had
If
come.
they had come,
But-
if they had come, but they did not, but they've joined us via Skype, so that was fantastic.
They missed the little muffins over on the craft table. so
They missed the
they
muffins. Rich, Jeff, next time, muffins.
Well, it would have been great to be there with you guys too, but I'm glad I didn't have to fly. And since I'm watching my weight, I'm not too concerned about the muffins. See you later, guys.
This is great. Thanks for having me on.
And in our next video, Dan's going to share with you exactly how to use offline marketing to explode your offline and your online profits. I'm Dave D, and remember, at GKIC, we're dedicated to multiplying your income without all the BS. We'll see you in the next video.